I wanna be a billionaire so fucking bad. Buy all of the things I never had. I wanna be on the cover of Forbes magazine, smiling next to Oprah and the Queen. Oh, every time I close my eyes, I see my name in shiny lights. Yeah, a different city every night. Oh, I swear the world better prepare for when I'm a billionaire.
Yes, yes. Thank you for checking out. And we are back. We are back. 1 2 1 2. Let me hear myself a little bit better. The levels are good. The levels are good. And we are back. Once again to we are back once again to the Nation of Black Entrepreneurs. I am your host, Farakhan Norris, and I'm glad to share you that wonderful information that we have here at Brooklyn Free Speech, located in Brooklyn. I want to share with you some information now on the Brooklyn Knights. I've been doing some searching, and I do share to you a lot about the show is pretty much simple. It's composed of an entrepreneur that's been doing business, that's doing good. We start off with Brooklyn. We may have people all over. Whether you're a celebrity, retailer, the list goes on and on as far as the field of entrepreneurship in the United States of America. But I also share Banking Black, which is very important as far as us as black people. We tend to, one of the main things is good, starting a business is good, but if you're not circulating your dollars within your brothers and sisters, that doesn't equal to wealth and financial empowerment, and that's all what it's about. Education for myself, this is a learning journey. This is a process. So right now, I'm actually going to show someone, an entrepreneur from Brooklyn. Um, Entrepreneur in Brooklyn, and to share her story with you, and I'm also going to share some other people. So sit back. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Peace.
So Denver is my home. I'm fourth generation from here. I went to Harrington, then Carson Elementary, then I went to Gove Junior High School when there was a Gove, and then East. And my father went to Denver East. A number of my relatives also went to East, and it was a great school. And it was a school when I was coming through, I had a great group of classmates, and they were actually introducing computers for the first time. And so my computer instructor was telling me about, I was asking, well, how does this actually work? And was telling me about the transistor. And, it was developed at this place called Bell Labs. And I found out there was one in Colorado. So Denver Bell Labs. And I called them. I said, I'd love to get an internship. Do you have them? They said, yes, if you're between your junior and senior year in college. I said, well, that's great. I'm a junior in high school taking AP classes just like being in college. And they said, well, no, it isn't. And I said, well, I'd love an internship. And so I called every day for 2 weeks. They stopped taking the call after the second day, and I called every Monday for about 5 months. And one day they called back and said a student from MIT didn't show up. We have an extra slot, and if you'd be interested, we're not guaranteeing your job. You can come and interview, because remember, they'd never met me. So I put on the one suit that I owned and put $2 of gas in my car and drove out there and got the job, and basically worked there for the next almost 3.5, 4 years as an intern while I matriculated with my degree at Cornell. I think they appreciated the fact that I really wanted that job, and I really wanted to better myself, and they did a fabulous job of putting me with wonderful mentors who helped me understand what I call the joy of figuring things out. And that's why we offer in our portfolio companies over 90 internships a year, because I think the intern program is one of the best ways for people to gain experience and frankly get a chance to look at a student or a person who might actually be a very effective employee or leader and manager sometime. dynamic that they have to embrace is the pace of change has accelerated. Truly, intellectual property, intellectual capital is now the currency of business, and it is a currency of engagement. The ideas, the thoughts, how free-flowing and how quickly they flow, and the impact that they have in the communities and businesses in which they operate. They're going to have to make sure they have, the facility of their minds have to be, frankly, a lot more accelerated, and also need to understand the impact of what they say can reverberate a lot faster with a lot more force. So I think those are the things they have to be more conscious of. They have to be conscious of, what might be an innocuous tweet in the middle of the night can create massive reverberations for other communities on the other side of the world. So those are the things they have to be conscious of. Now I'm addressing the graduate students. So they've kind of already laid their bets as to this is the profession that they want to focus on. And the real question is, how do you make sure you make a change in the world, in your community, leveraging your profession? If you're an engineer, there are certain things you can do. If you're a teacher, there are other things you can do and different things you can do. And I think it's important that I say, you pick a cause and have an effect, as opposed to meander without direction and just kind of glance through different sets of economic opportunities. But pick a cause and make an effect. So be purposeful. That's what I really want the message to be left with these students.
Of nationalities, the one thing as a black man, I noticed that it is time, little by little, and I am seeing it. And this is the beginning, even all across the states of the world, there's a movement going on where many people are switching banks. I didn't say switch all your money. Some you don't have. You can. I mean, I don't know necessarily the figures, but in the future I will bring the specialists. Me personally, I put a good amount as far as being in the black-owned banks. But that gets the ball running to create jobs and to create businesses for the entrepreneurs that want to create jobs, that want to change that. But if you don't, then don't complain. And that's just me personally. And no, you don't. I don't want nobody to call in as well. That's another thing with this show. This show is for educational purposes only. Meaning, I want you to take the time, black through white. I want you to sit at home peacefully and have a conversation. If you think I'm crazy, hey, the brother, he lost his mind. Whatever you feel, this is time to spend with your loved ones, your homegirls, your board meetings, and talk. Because there is a need where black ownership is so small, you can smoke it, in a cigarette or whatever it is. But it's just so small as far as ownership. Farmland, farming industry, you name it. Where whites, Asians are 11-1, I believe that's the ratio. 11-1.
You have to make sure that beyond the intention that you put out there, you put action to support the intention. Don't say, I want to be a millionaire, but don't take the activities to do it.
Don't focus on the highest brand of tennis shoes. Don't feel like you gotta have the Gucci bag or the Jimmy Choo shoes that you can't afford. But that's what happens. Or get the car that's bigger than your house. You've got to figure out a way to save. If you do not save, you cannot invest. You cannot acquire assets.
I think money is the easiest part of the 7 steps of entrepreneurship. And I ain't had no money. But I got a student loan at Ohio State One guy took that money and brought him a 1973 yellow Camaro. It's pretty. I took mine and bought a McDonald's. I mean, these are choices we make. So I don't think that money is a barrier for entrepreneurial endeavors.
Every single wealthy person in the world really have used other people's money to have created wealth. Every single wealthy person owns their business for the long term. Mutual funds typically turn over their portfolios once a year. I don't know of one wealthy person who buys and sells his or her business every year.
An entrepreneur knows what no one knows. That's the secret to success for an entrepreneur. An idea strikes you, which no one knows about. Only you know about that idea. That was what makes you successful.
Be dedicated to whatever that you are doing. It is not really good for you to now go and try something, then after a month you just say, no, it doesn't work. You jump into something else.
It took me a year of calling television stations, literally all I did, and actually got about 40 no's from every station in the country, about 40,000 no's.
Too many young people are quite happy to sit back and do nothing but wait for a miracle to get rich quickly. Mine has not been an overnight success.
Talking to him backstage about how we lack leadership when it comes to African Americans, when it comes to a black man. But what's great about it is that he does his business and he just happens to be. He happens to be a black man. It's not something that he goes and says, I got my black card and therefore I should get, in the front of the line. He actually does fantastic work. But when I went to Lincoln Hills, which he'll speak about that, I'm sure, which is very significant when it comes to our culture. He owns 7 miles of river in Lincoln Hills, which is in Colorado. Give it up for a black man owning 7 miles. 7 cars, he has 7 miles of river. He has the #1 fly fishing, am I right? The #1 fly, yeah, tell him, Jay. I'm ladies like, ooh, he owns 7 miles. Dude, I'm ready to 7 on this credit score. 7 miles of river. We all went up, we had a great time. He has a great bar at his house that he, when we finished, it was a bar with a stage on it where we actually performed, and you've had great performers come up. You had Jay Leno not too long ago come up. And you can fish and you can hunt and you can do all these things that, you wouldn't necessarily think that an African-American man does, but he does that. But what's great about it is that he had 2,000 inner city kids come to where this is. And let me explain to you the significance. There are kids right now in LA that have never been to the beach. There are kids in the inner city that never get off their block and they never get a chance to see what they can or cannot be. The only thing they see is their surroundings, and most of the time that's bad. So 2,000 kids he's had up there. The other thing is the Wounded Warriors program. So he has I don't know how many Wounded Warriors have been up there, but the way he built his cabins, there's a cabin where you can actually fish off of the embankment, off the platform, but he set it up so that if they are impaired or if they don't have limbs. So once again, it speaks to not just him as his business savvy, but what he is as a person. And that's what's the most gratifying thing about what you're about to witness. And not only that, as I talk about him, someone you can hang out with, someone who's cool, someone who's fly, but at the same time smart, can talk about anything, whether it was politics, what we talked about earlier, or what you're about to talk, the tech world, which I have no idea. I 411 the other day. I called 411. And these young dudes was like, you calling who? I called 411 to get to y'all 411 no one? No, we Google, yeah, I was before when my Google is. So he would tell you about that. But here's the other thing that we want to do. His story is amazing. His story is going to go down in history. We talked about how can we come together and do something significant on my side of town. He witnessed this when I saw Harry Belafonte go on stage, just as I was supposed to get a Lifetime Achievement Award, for whatever that meant, in front of Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte stood up and he said, the blood that spills in America from violence is mostly African American, and you young, talented celebrities sit there mute. And he gave this fantastic speech. I reached in my pocket and took my speech and I tore it up. My life changed after that. I went and sat with Mr. Belafonte and asked him about who he was. I took my daughter to meet him as well. And I said, Mr. Belafonte, how was it when you were coming up? He said, when I came back from World War II, I realized that we couldn't vote. So myself, Martin, and others, we marched. I said, wait a minute, you saying that like it's a boy band group. Like, he says, it was myself and Martin Luther King. He funded the Civil Rights Movement. They said, either you can go and be a big star, or you can come out here and help these Negroes and help them do this thing they call the Civil Rights Movement. He did that with his checkbook, along with others. Myself and Robert talked about that. I'm 47, about to be 48. But what about the kid that's 38, 28, or 18? They've never heard that story. So what we want to do is we want to do a dinner with legends that Robert is going to fund. And we're going to get Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, Barry Gordy, Robert, Clarence Billy Russell, and we're going to do a dinner, and we should all be able to come to that dinner and sit at their feet and listen to their stories, because I've heard these men talk about what they've done, and it moves me, and he knows it as well. And so that's just one of the feathers in his cap that he's allowing us to witness, and that's what we're going to do in February. But I guarantee you, this question and answer is going to be something that's going to move you, and I hope you will enjoy it. And this is my friend, Robert F. Smith.
And bring to bear a transformation in those businesses. We help them operate more efficiently, more effectively, typically expanding the size of their organizations, i.e. create more jobs, the opportunity set, more products they can sell to their customers, improve their revenue growth, improve their profit margins, and then sell it at a higher number at the end, and then return that capital back to our limited partners, and of course we take some portion of it for ourselves.
And why did you choose enterprise software?
It's interesting. Enterprise software, and the way to really think about it, it is the most productive tool that's been introduced in our business economy over the last 50 years. I want you to actually think about, for some of us here, what life was like 35 years ago in the business community. When you did anything from check in and out of a hotel, or bought an airline ticket, or how you kept the power grid stable, or actually, how did you manage an insurance portfolio, or even sign up an insurance policy. Today, we do that all electronically, if you think about it, right? It has created a massive productivity element throughout almost every single industry on the planet, and especially in developed economies. And the thing about it, which is what's neat about enterprise software, is it's an intellectual property-based business. And if you think about this conference, wealth inequality, et cetera, many businesses that you'd like to go in to make money, you need a lot of capital, right? Real estate, for instance, there was a big deal that was done. Folks know GE Capital has decided to get out of that business, right? And the ramifications of that are huge, and people won't realize that for a few years, but one of the early things they did was they just sold a $23 billion portfolio of real estate assets to Blackstone. Well, if you don't have that kind of capital base, you can't go into that business, period. Whereas if you're in the world of software, all you need is intellectual property and access to computing power, which now we have with this thing called the internet. You have access via your phone to more computing power than they had by a multiple to put a man on the moon 35, 40 years ago, right? So the thing about enterprise software, it actually liberates. And it has the potential to liberate individuals, and of course that liberation of individual mindsets can create tremendous economic wealth for individuals. And that's why you see this massive economic wealth expansion in places like California, where there is a systemic structuring for the development of these sort of entrepreneurial ideas, leveraging software, leveraging technology to create new products and services sold throughout industry. So The reason I moved into this business is because it has this high productivity component to it. It doesn't require, in some respects, a lot of capital, but it requires intellectual capital to actually create products and services and solutions and then create wealth and value. And so in terms of barriers to entry, it has, in some respects, a very high one in terms of knowledge, know-how, intellectual property, but a low one in terms of capital. And so that's one of the reasons why I selected that industry as the first to go in.
So, I mean, I think people are going to be curious about how you even got exposure to this kind of industry. And you're 52 years old.
Well, okay.
Tell us your story. You had two parents who were PhDs in education.
I'm still just bruised over here. Okay.
It's on your bio, so I figured you weren't shy about that.
No,
okay. Your parents were PhDs in education. Where were they from?
My mother's actually from here, Washington, D.C. And my grandfather worked in this building actually back when FDR was inaugurated. And, funny story about that. I brought him when President Obama was inaugurated. And my grandfather, who was at that time 92, walked. Remember how cold it was that entire day for about 2.5 hours there and 2.5 hours back, and didn't complain the whole day. And a good friend of ours, Senator Ted Kennedy, gave us the tickets. So I'm sitting and he's pointing, oh, look at that, and he, as we sat down, he said, Grandson, you see that window up there with the flag under it? I said, yeah. He said, I was in that lounge when FDR was inaugurated. And I looked down, because, he served coffee and tea. And from that, I told people I discovered the joy of figuring things out.
So you get excited about technology. You're at Bell Labs and all. Let's jump into your career. You joined Goldman Sachs in 1994.
Yeah.
You join our, to call it fledgling, our technology business. You're at the firm, 6 years or so. You've been involved in building this franchise. But how did it feel, or what was going on in your head when you walked in and you said, hey, I'm going to leave and go start my own business? What was going on in your head? Because if you think about it, that was 1999, right, or 2000?
Yeah, 99. So here's where that starts. So remember, I was an engineer for 6 years. Think about that. So I got a chance in my early part of my engineering career to work on some of the early implementations of software into process industries. Think about it, software, technology, probably the most productive tool introduced in our business economy in the last 50 years, enterprise software. And then I run into this little software company based in Houston, Texas. I take them on as a sell-side project, and through that, I learn how they're running this business. And I say, oh my God, if you actually took what they use as their best practices and laid them across these enterprise software companies, you could make a fortune. I said, what do you guys do with all this money? And they're buying CDs, certificates of deposit. This is 97, 98, 99. I said, and they said, well, what would you suggest? I said, well, there's this thing called private equity. They said, well, what is that? So I told them what private equity is. And they said, well, can you introduce us to some of these people? I said, sure. And they came back and said, a lot of them seem to be in the asset aggregation business as opposed to truly the value creation business. I said, well, that's a fair assessment. Yeah. They said, what else? I said, if I were you, I would take that money and I'd drive it into these enterprise software businesses. I'd take these best practices that you all have and I'd apply them across these companies and you'll probably do okay. And they said, that's the best idea we've ever heard. Would you be interested in being a general partner if we were the limited partners? And I said, well, I'm not too sure about that. And so that's what led to the formation of Vista.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah,
it's a great story, and it's you look back in history. It's one of the things big organizations have to wrestle with. Yeah. They get momentum going in a certain direction, and there are great stories about people who have great ideas that sometimes can be executed in platform, right, but for a variety of reasons they wind up off platform.
Yeah, and the key is, and this is the challenge I know I face, and I know you face it at a much bigger scale, is creating an environment that evolves.
Yeah.
Right? But you have to be thoughtful about creating an environment where new ideas of innovation are not only welcomed, but they're encouraged, they're embraced, and the success of them are trumpeted.
Sure.
Because otherwise you have the risk of, like all things, the complacency factor, leads you down a narrowing road of opportunity. And look, I face it with my own firm now, 18 years, 17 going on 18 years in the making. of how do we make sure we don't atrophy on what we were good at? And oh, by the way, how do we ensure that we continue to evolve our culture on the one hand and expand our business opportunities in the markets that we're in?
When you kind of sit in your perch and you look out, what are the businesses today that you think are most fundamentally vulnerable to technology disruption, and where are the moats the deepest?
Man, you sure you want me to tell the truth about this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
A local foundation that helps at-risk students in the capital region get a good education brought in a big name tonight. Asa Stakel tells us why billionaire Robert Smith was in Albany and what so many hope to learn from him.
It's not often you see a billionaire in the pulpit, but that's where investor Robert Smith was at the Metro Baptist Church in Albany, delivering financial and life advice to a packed house.
We are talking about the full platform of opportunities and ways for folks to engage this world as productive citizens.
Fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha brought Smith here to be the keynote speaker at the Black and Gold Gala. It's the George Biddle Kelly Foundation's biggest fundraiser of the year. But before that, they wanted the community to get a chance to ask how to achieve financial success, something many of the people the foundation serves have never been taught.
There's been discussions about, income disparities, and the work that we do, it's very evident that people in struggling communities really haven't been exposed to how to manage money, how to manage assets.
The foundation provides several annual scholarships and has a program for at-risk young men. It's named after Troy native George Biddle Kelly. He was the first African-American engineer registered with New York and the first president of the Alpha fraternity. Smith is also an Alpha brother. He's the founder, chairman, and CEO of Vista Equity Partners. That company has more than $15 billion in assets. He says he doesn't do interviews, but he answered plenty of questions from the community. And the foundation is hoping this advice might just make another billionaire out of a young person in the pews. Asa Stakel, News Channel 13.
Hey guys, for Complex Hustle, I'm Asia Celestino. You may not recognize his name right away, but Robert Smith, a self-described quiet engineer, is impacting the next generation of African Americans. He's a former Goldman Sachs exec, the founder of investment firm Vista Equity Partners, and, oh yeah, the second richest black billionaire in the US. The first is Oprah, in case you forgot. But Smith credits his career achievements to a solid education even before college. As a junior at East High School, a public school in Denver, Colorado, he became interested in computer science. His favorite subject led to an obsession with a college internship at Bell Labs. Smith says after 6 months of relentlessly calling the company to intern, he was offered an interview, the internship, and eventually a job. He told 9 News that he wants to be a role model for young black men, inspiring them to pursue careers in science, tech, engineering, and math. It's important that these young African American men understand there are people like Robert Smith out there who can actually be learned in the sciences, engineering, finance, and create a platform that can impact not tens, not hundreds, but millions